other players, and I think that was an assessment that he would have probably agreed with Daniel. I think he would have had in his mind's eye a big plan for quite a robust shake-up over the summer. And I just look at it, from my perspective, you've got to ask the question, from what he has done, and we know, and we've said, and it's a really curious situation, in that the metric for judging a managerial success or not is winning games. And Barry Ferguson hasn't done enough of that over the period, and he would say so himself. But on this specific occasion, I can't use that as the metric, because the group of players that he inherited, he knew when he went in, there were going to be bumps along the road, which there certainly were. But what I'm looking at is, do I think that he had done enough over that period, the way that he led the thing, the way that he held it together, the way that he conducted himself and fronted it up, and some of the results. Let's not forget there were some massive results and big tactical performances in there as well, against the likes of Brendan Rodgers and Jose Mourinho. So I'm asking myself, do I think that he did enough in that period to deserve the opportunity of bringing in his own players and doing things his way this summer? And even if it was just, I think you minimise the risk, because I think Barry Ferguson would have taken that position on in a 1-year rolling contract. So if it didn't work out, you weren't going to have to fork out 4 years gardening leave money. So did I think that he'd done enough over the piece to earn a crack at it? Absolutely, I did. But now remains to be seen. We're about to find out the jib of the people who have got control of Rangers. I don't think Andrew Kavanagh is involved in the process. I think this one is Kevin Thirlwell and Greta Steinson. And it's going to be really interesting, because I can't help but feel there's been a bit of a misstep already with the Davide Ancelotti debacle. Who's to say, until Ancelotti has actually put pen to paper on a contract with the Brazilian FA, then maybe he remains an active player. I'd struggle to imagine that he would be. I think Rangers must be pretty embarrassed. They must feel a bit used. They actually come out of that looking a little bit wet behind the ears. I was sitting here last week saying, this feels like a bit of a false flag operation, this. And it felt as if Rangers were being used for leverage by Don Carlo himself. And then lo and behold, the next thing you know, it looks as if Davide is following his dad to the Brazilian national job on a more permanent basis, not just for 2 games in June. That whole situation, Rangers didn't come out of it looking particularly clever. I could be wrong. Maybe they'll produce Davide Ancelotti Jr this week, and he'll be the new man. I would find it difficult to believe that, though, because if it's not Barry Ferguson, then maybe it would lead you to believe maybe they want a guy with more experience. And he's had great experiences travelling the world with his dad, been to massive clubs. I'm sure he's picked up a lot along the way, but he's a manager who hasn't held a manager's position.
It's a different ballgame, isn't it?
Yeah. So I'll be fascinating to see. It's simply a decision that Rangers have to get right. Otherwise, we could be sitting here in 12 months' time, and they might have to go cap in hand to Barry Ferguson again to steady the ship yet again. Who knows? But the thing that needs to be at the front and centre of the mind for the guys that are making this decision is that there has to be a realisation. Barry Ferguson said it at the weekend, and he was absolutely spot on when he said this can't be considered as a project. This is not the kind of club where you run a project in terms of give a new manager 5 years to do something. It just doesn't work like that in Glasgow. And you can go into it with all the best intentions and think, yep, that's what we're going to do, and we're going to structure it this way. But I'm telling you now, you get to October, if Celtic are 8 points clear and blazing away towards what would that be, title number
5 in a row.
Then the Rangers fans just won't sit quietly and say, oh, that's okay, we need to give this guy time. It doesn't work that way. So whoever it is that they've got their mind on or got an eye on, he really has to come in and he really has to hit the ground running, and he needs to make Rangers a credible challenger next season, because if failure to do so, it's just rinse and repeat, and they'll be back in the exact same mess all over again.
There was even a claim in L'Équipe today in France that outgoing Lons manager, Will Still, he's claiming that he turned down the Rangers job. He's only 32. So another young guy. He's been quite highly rated, I think, in French football. But it does kind of suggest that they're a wee bit...
The profile.
Aye. It seems... I mean, I'm really surprised by it. I mean, this comment here from... if I can find it, from John, says they dodged a bullet by not having a rookie like Ancelotti Jr. for a massive rebuilding job. And I would agree with that sentiment. I mean, this isn't a place for you to cut your teeth.
No, I agree with that as well, which is why it just... I'm not sure what the thinking is behind the whole thing, how joined up it is. I'm not sure how real the whole Ancelotti thing was in terms of, did they really go after him? Did they really pursue him? I think there's probably enough reason. I think sources within Rangers they certainly haven't denied that. So it would make you believe, assessing these things as you get used to it over the years, you kind of get a feel, was there something? Yes, I'm pretty certain there was an approach, there was a conversation of some sort. For it then to be portrayed from everywhere, from Madrid to Milan, as a done deal and a fait accompli, that was a weird thing. And, if I get a red flag on that, if I can see that for what it is, which is what I think it was using the whole Rangers thing like a stalking horse to get something else elsewhere. That's what it looked like, and it did look as if Carlo Ancelotti was leaning on a couple of people to get that message out. And if I can see that for here, that would give me a little bit of a concern about the guys that are heading up the process right now. Do they know what they're doing? Are they a little bit naive here? Because there's a couple of things here that might raise concerns. So it'll be, as I said, fascinating, and I do think. Fairly comfortable in saying the fact that they were able to eliminate Barry Ferguson from the running today would suggest to me that they're almost there. They're almost over the line in terms of the guy that they do want.
I will bring in Des Roach in just a moment, and we'll go over some of the very controversial decisions from yesterday. But before we do, just a couple more comments because they're coming in thick and fast. JJ says, it's like a rock and a hard place for the Bears. Did they stick with staunch and inexperience or roll the dice on foreign and inexperience? This one as well, if I can find it. Well, this one is actually, Mark says, everyone watching, please hit the like button. Nice. Thanks, Mark.
Cheers, Mark.
Rangers Easy OK says, I reckon it'll be Ancelotti or Danny Roll. Reckon they want a coach, not a manager, to implement a style of play. We're being linked to players over the weekend. Who's signing them currently? I mean, I imagine Kevin Thelwell's probably behind a lot of that. Keith, I mean, is that fair assumption?
You would imagine so, but they do have Niels Koppen in there as well. But again, it's the old Einstein one, isn't it, about doing the same thing over and over, etc., etc. Because the recruitment department at Rangers at Auchenhowie is broken. It's a shambles, and it's been a shambles for some considerable length of time. So if it's these same people making these same mistakes, identifying the same type of players who aren't cut out for it. I think there's quite a lot. Look, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to pee in anybody's cornflakes here. The Rangers supporters have got a lot to look forward to this summer. This is an exciting time, and it should be viewed as an exciting time for Rangers because they are getting the change that they so desperately needed. There will be fresh ideas, fresh thinking, fresh finance. The whole kit and caboodle, and now there's going to be a new manager as well.